Forbes India GCC Leadership Exchange in association with Smartworks.
Hello and a very warm welcome to the Forbes India GCC Leadership Exchange in association with Smartworks. Bengaluru has long been India's technology address, but its global capability centers, GCCs, are no longer merely offshore extensions of global enterprises. Today, they are becoming the enterprise itself, setting strategy, owning products, and driving innovation that shapes global markets. The central question is no longer whether India can lead, but what it actually takes to lead from the inside. Today, we are joined by 4 leaders engineering this transition to explore what it takes to move from pure execution to global ownerships. Please welcome Sri Rangarajan HV, Managing Director, Diageo Business Services India, and Operations Leader shaping Diageo into a multi-jurisdictional powerhouse while actively advancing Bengaluru's GCC policy framework. Swati Rastogi, Vice President, Employee Experience, Adobe, a visionary building a dynamic people-first culture at scale within Adobe's second largest global workforce. Vaibhav Srinivasan, Managing Director, Availity India, a transformative executive who successfully shepherded Availity India from a product support center into a full-stack technology and innovation hub. And Harsh Binani, co-founder Smartworks, a leading architect redefining India's premium managed workspaces and positioning real estate as a strategic asset for global enterprises. Welcome to all of you. And Harsh, if I have to start with you and looking at the physical foundation of the shift, when we are looking at GCCs, we are almost looking at the cost. We are looking at talent. We are looking at now suddenly everybody waking up to the reality that India is one of the big answers. But is that it? What is the physical foundation, the kind of infrastructure that needs to be built for a GCC?
India has evolved dramatically in the last decade, where we today are the office capital to the world, and in less than a decade, the absorption that's happened in the office space reflects truly how India has become such a strategic lever for large global enterprises. And if we had to still add this up, India's entire office stock today is still less than New York. So on one end, you are having India transition from becoming a middle income country to a more developed, and at the same time, global companies continue to have India as the top choice. Both of these augur very well for the future of India, particularly as we think about India as the most important GCC hub in the world. Back in the day, India was known more as a cost center advantage. And it's undeniably true that when it comes to rentals, as well as the talent availability here, India trumps any other country. And of course, it becomes even more juicier now, especially with INR depreciating the way it has with USD. But underneath all of these headlines, the undercurrent that we've observed in the last 5 years particularly is the fact that India is now smoothly transitioning from becoming a cost arbitrage to a capability arbitrage. And when you move into the office spaces and when you start having dialogue with such esteemed GCC leaders, you can start to see that shift happening, that we are no longer here as the execution engine. We are much rather where the decisions are starting to get made, and that is going to open up a window of opportunity, which is what is exciting for us as we move ahead.
Ranga, staying with that idea of moving from execution to perhaps ownership in a multi-jurisdictional GCC like yours, how do you hold consistent operational standards, ensuring that ground-up innovation is also happening, compliances are in order, and at the same time, it's working round the clock?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for inviting us here. Good to be part of this forum. So from a GCC standpoint in Diageo, what we've been doing is moving towards global process ownership model. And what that essentially means that every process taxonomy gets defined with respect to how a global standard should look like for the company. and that's defined by external benchmarks, best way of carrying out processes. And through the global process ownership model, what we do is only allow for jurisdictional sort of compliance-related exceptions, and thereby maintaining real high sort of efficient global processes. And that's what drives, that is driven through the global process ownership model.
When we talk about people, yeah, that's where I want to bring you, Swati, in. Not just these companies that we are looking at, even Adobe has a huge presence and second largest number of employees here, over 8,000. To design a place for that kind of inter-age population that is working in a very culturally complex country like ours, how do you design that from the table to actually action?
I think the way we've always looked at spaces, people, and so it's workforce, workplace, and work experiences. And I think for us, they have always gone hand in hand. Irrespective of whichever part of the world that you work in Adobe, and definitely in India, we've been very thoughtful about how do we design our foundations of work. So really constantly future-proofing those foundations in terms of experiences. And when we've looked at employee experience, it's a holistic experience. It's about that desk, but it's also about how they are being, what's the interaction, how are managers interacting, how are we encouraging innovation and ideation, and that's not new. It's been there for the 20 years that we've been here. So it is about future-proofing foundations, and it's also about being present, very intentionally present, in the moments that matter, in the spaces that matter. And that's something you experience when you walk into our office. And every time I host a bunch of colleagues or I invite industry into our offices, we get that feeling of, there is warmth. It's not just about having a big office space or designing it beautifully, but it's about the warmth.
Vaibhav, from people transformation journeys to product transformation, you have been at the helm of affairs from moving the company from support to innovation, and the last couple of years have been transformative. How would you define this journey? How was this possible, and what did it demand from the leadership?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I think there are three things that were very critical in this transformation. One is, I think we were very clear in the beginning, we don't want to be measured by our headcount. Newspaper headlines will tell you this GCC opened with 5,000 headcount. We didn't want to be defined by the number of people that we are. We wanted to be defined by three criteria largely. What's the revenue that we are adding to the enterprise? Or what's the efficiency that we are bringing to our enterprise? Or what's the customer satisfaction or the net promoter score addition that we are bringing to the enterprise? So it is very important to look at the goalposts a little differently, right? So that conviction was super critical. That change in mindset was super critical. The other thing that we told ourselves was, we'll prioritize long-term benefit over short-term gains. It is very easy to scale a GCC doing very simple work. But that, in my opinion, is not sustainable. And this is what we're seeing across the ecosystem. Ability is not alone in this, where I think a lot of GCs are putting long-term gains and taking short-term pains for that. I think that's been the second thing that's super critical. The journey is tough in the initial phase to convince that the teams have the capability to take ownership, the capability to take accountability, capability to take a problem and solve that problem. And therefore understand the business context in the whole thing and just not look at this as a task that needs to be solved. So that mindset shift was also super critical. I wouldn't say we are at the end of the journey, we are in progress, but I think these criteria have been super critical in transforming and looking at everything as a product company rather than a capability center that's only trying to save cost, in my opinion.
Harsh, as global companies are moving to not just Bangalore, but other cities, but Bangalore being the innovation hub and offering a global ecosystem, how has your work changed. I know your products have become different. You're not just offering infrastructure, but also so much more. Smartvantage comes to my mind. How was that designed? What were the things that led to it? What were the kind of signals you were getting from the industry that you said, all right, this is not really part of our ambit, but you know what? We know how to do this and we will create a product like that.
Absolutely, and funny that Swati, observed a very interesting nugget, which is drawing people back to work, which is to provide their entire experience. And back in the day when Smartworks started the business, co-working happened to be more of a global idea. But time and again, history has taught us that in India, the idea that wins is what can actually Indianize and take care of the Indian problems. And the undercurrent, having spent a lot of time in US in my formative years, was very clear that India needs a massive upgrade of the entire office experience where you are able to cater to the aspirations of the employees. Because in days such as now, where social media makes it very easy for us to see what is happening in my global HQ versus what is happening here, the aspirational employee base is now demanding better services and better play. So we very quickly pivoted to moving away from being a co-working player to creating a new category, which has now become the largest in the world. So similar to the quick commerce revolution, you are actually seeing a flex space revolution in India right now, where the category which we pioneered, which is managed workspace campuses, is now gaining a lot of preeminence and vogue. And the major driver for that is the expectation from a lot of employers that we are not solving only for space. We are building and positioning India into an innovation hub for the world. An innovation hub, as soon as you enter the office, you can really smell and see that this office is actually a cost center office and this center is an innovation office, because you need that unplanned interactions. You need those discussion hubs where rather than working in cubicles, you can actually continue to work in silos. And where we sensed a big opportunity, which is where now we are leasing really large campuses, which would count among the largest in the world, is to create those aspirational amenities in the campus and not solving only for your office needs, but using infrastructure as a strategic lever. So when you mentioned about Smartvantage, the problem that we identified was that the large GCCs and global employers are no longer looking at only great office spaces with aspirational amenities. They want not plug-and-play offices, they want an ecosystem. How do you get an ecosystem? You get an ecosystem by bringing together all the partners that you require to run your GCC very effectively, whether it's the right recruitment and staffing partners or the tax and compliance partners. And today in day of AI, where it's proliferating so quickly, you need enough support hubs to ensure that that transition happens very smoothly.
What interventions do you see can accelerate Bengaluru's evolution into a global innovation center? Where do you see a gap and how can that be filled?
Sure. So, in my interactions with the state government, I think the government is doing a lot already in improving the GCC policy. I think Karnataka was the first state to sort of formally launch a GCC policy. But I think some of the areas where we still need to bridge a gap is on how the state government can work through the academia to build talent that is ready for sort of the changing needs of the industry. That's one. And also helping the GCCs with a even better sort of startup ecosystem. Bangalore has become the startup capital also for the country. How they can work together with the startup ecosystem so that can fuel the GCCs further. I think these are areas that they can definitely sort of intervene in.
Vaibhav, just adding to that, your industry is very, very compliance centric, and stakeholders have to be very careful about not just the law of the land, but also what you're dealing with. There is deep compliance with the need for speed and innovation. How is that balance struck?
I think we've always looked at the fact that it is easier to innovate if we are within the compliance jurisdiction, right? I mean, you're right that we come under significant amount of compliance requirement and
scrutiny as well.
Scrutiny as well, and quite obvious because it is patients' data. which is really, really sensitive in that sense. So it's been super critical in our processes. It is very clear on what aspects of compliance are required and make that very simple. And within the organization, compliance is everybody's responsibility. I mean, compliance is not one compliance team's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility of every associate in the organization. And the processes are very clearly defined to ensure that a non-compliance is is picked up at a very early stage, and there are, if any, those are rectified immediately. And what we've seen is once we have taken care of those aspects, the way our environment is designed, the environments in which innovation happens are safe. We've seen innovation is much easier to blossom. On the contrary, we have seen much faster innovations in compliance-safe environments because the innovation is ready with a few changes to get ready to get into the market rather than innovating without having compliance at the background and then having to tweak so much that the innovation loses relevance. So I think that's been super critical part of our success as well within the GCCs in that sense because, again, we have leveraged a lot of learnings from the fintech market where equally sensitive. So we've been able to leverage on keeping compliance as a mantra to that sense. So that's not negotiable. So you build further from there. Yeah.
Swati, we have classically seen that it is much easier to have happier workplaces when you're not thinking about scale. When you're thinking about scale, when you're thinking about a large number of people working in an organization, you do need your compliances of HR, you do need your discipline, you do need your structure, a little more strictly perhaps than other organizations that are dealing with lesser people. When you're working with scale, what are the challenges in uniformity and also bringing heart to people?
It's a very interesting polarity, and I think most organizations go through this phase when you're a startup and then you grow and you have to start putting in rules of work and etc. I think what has helped is being very clear and drawing the boundary on what is not acceptable. I think sometimes as organizations we can spend too much time on what is okay to do. The reality is actually just defining a boundary on what is absolutely not okay to do is much easier because that's a boundary that most people get and easier to communicate and really allowing for a lot of freedom inside of that boundary and not really being fussed about things that don't really matter in the long term. That's been our fundamental model, define what is not acceptable and be super clear about it through leadership role modeling, through talking about it. We worked on our values a lot, so really how do you bring values into action? Focus on those things versus the rules and guidelines and badging data and how many people came when, and then reward for the right behaviors.
But managing scale is also a very, very huge skill which develops over a period of time after having felt those challenges, after having seen what it actually means to scale. But for a physical infrastructure, Harsh, how do you suddenly, seamlessly provide for scale if a GCC comes and tells you, oh no, you know what, we need to expand our work? How does your capability center and your Smartworks premises, how are they equipped for this?
Look, back in the day, traditional real estate consumption happened in a very different manner, where you were looking at a very asset-heavy model. You were signing long leases of like 7 to 9 years. You were future-proofing the office to not only take care of your current needs, but also future. And therefore, where we sensed an opportunity was that in today's day, where speed is the biggest strategic lever that you have, and if someone is able to offer that in a one-stop platform solution rather than just offering space, they make an ecosystem available to you, then that becomes a very powerful force multiplier. Like today, in days of uncertainty, where with the impending AI transition that is happening across all the companies, you can't necessarily predict how many people do you need, which cities do you need, where can you expand, where can you contract. And here is where we recognize if you are able to offer that plug-and-play ecosystem solution in less than 60 to 90 days, then you are no longer a workspace provider for your client. You are in fact being a very core competency through which they can scale up very quickly and be extremely agile in their business decisions rather than worrying about space.
What has the experience been for each one of you when we were, Swati, I'm going to come to you the last because you would have answers to that. But Vaibhav, if I may start with you, when you look at talent and when you look at talent partnerships, what has it meant for you?
I think talent has meant everything because as global capability centers, we don't get anywhere without having the right talent. I think in this current age, the way we have looked at talent is not what the skill that they bring, but their ability to adapt has become super critical. Their ability to be able to think and make judgments on their own has become more important than knowing a particular code or something else. Because what we're seeing is with AI and related AI tools have brought in a lot of efficiency that's available on the table, but we just need the talent that's able to leverage on that rather than take that code and give it back. But how are they able to take that code, apply the context of the business, look at upstream and downstream impact of that. So that requires somebody who's able to think a little, able to apply judgment, and that has been the core of what we've tried to look at from that.
Ranga, would you like to add to that with your experience of working with a lot of employees and employability index still suffering? Would you say it is one of the things that a GCC concentrates on in India, which is after you get the talent, you spend a lot of time training them as well. You have the trainers with that skill, and you have those partnerships in place where an employee once hired tends to learn the ropes quicker than what they have had to learn at the campus?
Firstly, there are programs that we have in general to get the employees who are coming out of campus to be more ready from a actual work standpoint. But beyond that, when we look at talent across grades, I think what's more important for us, while there is a large talent pool in the market, given that the industry is now in 20 years or a little more than that. But the best that can come out of the talent is when they are able to, be able to link their work to the organization's outcomes that sort of they're working towards. I think making across grades, making our employees clearly understand how their work sort of translates to larger outcomes for the organization and being able to contribute to that, I think that makes a lot of difference. And also the ability to bring in continuous learning in them, giving them a platform where they feel there is progress and learning on a regular basis, not just linked to promotions, right? We believe that diverse work experience within the organization is progression, and that sort of really motivates people than just looking at progression as promotion.
Swati, taking leave from that, when we are talking about innovation and pushing a culture where people are not just following what they have been asked to do, but also trying to think out of the box, innovating, thinking about a product development, not working in silos, coming together, as we all discussed, we are talking about a very different employee population. This employee population is very different from the ones who would have just followed, right? They are the ones who are also demanding a lot out of themselves. And now you're sitting with them at scale. They come with their own demands of what is the company going to offer me? How am I going to grow in the company? And with that kind of scale, how are you able to give that concentration and attention to each and every one of the employee?
One of the things we've realized over time is yes, there are processes that all of us focus on, which is, your employee life cycle processes and growth and development, and all of that must continue. I'm not going to in any way say that that's not important. But I'm blessed and I'm very privileged to work for an organization which has stayed in the top 10 best employers for a very long time, and that takes effort. We continue to be the best place for women to work for decades now. There's a reason for that. And I think that reason goes beyond processes. It goes into relationships. We deeply care about every human being who walks into the door. And that's one of the reasons we, of course, there is attrition. I wouldn't say we have zero attrition, but we're probably one of the lowest in the industry, and that takes effort. And that relationship and care, one is the purpose, as you rightly said. What's the purpose and why are we doing? And for us, that purpose is power of expression. The fact that you're empowering people to create, that you're enabling them to express themselves in whichever way they want to, and people resonate with that. That's why they are in our workplace. But then deeply, therefore, enabling that expression in themselves.
Right.
So this is a human workplace. So enabling everyone to express, truly caring about these individuals. And the segment that we always do and remind our senior leaders is people come here to work with you. There is an institution, but there's a person who's walking into that door to work with you. How are you passing on whatever you've learned, and how are you enabling this individual to shine with their unique ideas? We put a lot of value on that.
Harsh, but when we talk about partnerships, a lot of GCCs are and a lot of enterprises are very confident about doing their business. Having said that, there are newer enterprises who are overwhelmed, who are thinking, I'm now going to be in a different geography. How do I learn about that geography? How do I learn about the systems? How do I learn where to get the talent from? What the compliances are like? Tell me some of your partnerships that evolved in these spaces over a period of time when you were looking at enterprises that were coming to you, asking for partnership on that level as well.
We've seen a very interesting shift, particularly in the last 5 years, where India has made a rapid transition from becoming, let's say, the support infra to now the innovation infra. Support infra has very different business imperatives. You're largely solving for cost optimization, repeatable task, all of which now in the world of AI, we believe will start to become a lot more AI and tech driven rather than only people driven. Where the opportunity really lies is the fact that as we are now moving up the value chain, and that is the opportunity for India, that how can we disproportionately capture a much larger share of the high value work, whether it's controlling the entire product life cycle in the office, whether it's ensuring that you're not the execution machine, but you're rather the decision and the thinking ability. That has put a very different pressure in terms of not only creating a very agile workspace, which is more innovation-led, and you can, again, sense very quickly whenever you move into the office that if this is the innovation hub which is driving a lot of the strategic imperatives for the company, you need those serendipity moments. You need those unplanned interactions. You need to create an experience which is not only about providing amenities and aspirations, but designing the workspace in a manner which is providing that entire ecosystem in a plug-and-play manner. What used to take 9 to 12 months, how can you compress that into 60 to 90 days? Here is where we've been working with a lot of the ecosystem partners and essentially creating a product, which is what led to the evolution of SmartVantage, that earlier we were providing you a hassle-free one-stop solution anywhere in India and provide you a workspace which is not a support infra, but rather more of an innovation hub in 60 to 90 days. Now all of that can be packaged together because you're sitting right at the intersection of not only workspace, but also needs that any large GCC has. Right. It starts with recruitment and staffing, ensures, as Vaibhav sir pointed out, to have that compliance framework, which in every state in India can be very different. And then ensuring that all the research and the innovation needs are all taken care of. And which is where we see this is an exciting opportunity, but it is also a transitory opportunity which all of us are absorbing and evolving. But clearly it looks very, very promising how things are unfolding.
Last question to all of you would be your final comments on the much thrown words of agility and resilience. And also now that you are in a phase in India where perhaps your teams are setting the legacies. What are you most excited about?
What I'm excited about is there is no paths to follow. It is not like it was 15 years back and there is a technology path, there is a solution path. I think the path is uncertain. Therefore, I think the winners are going to be the ones that are going to march with a purpose, brave, and willing to go into territories or things that were not done before, think out of the box. Never has there been an opportunity where It almost seems to me that the entire humanity now can think out of the box with the current set of tools and the way things are changing.
Uncertainty creates risk, but if you flip the coin, it also creates a massive opportunity, which is what is going to be extremely critical for India over the next couple of decades. What we're trying to embark upon now is what only 3 or 4 countries in the last 50 years have been able to achieve, right? Move away from middle income trap to becoming a developed. And as Vaibhav rightly pointed out, in the past, we've not had such a decade where so much uncertainty and volatility has been part of our existence. India has to create this as an opportunity to embrace. And the 2 buzzwords that you mentioned are, in fact, in our mind, superpower. Agility and resilience, because if you're not agile in times such as these, you will not be able to take advantage of the opportunity, because AI in some manner or shape has democratized and made a lot of table stakes available very freely to all. Of course, in India with widespread adoption, you'll need the cost reduction, you'll need computing power, etc., to all come down, which of course are opportunity areas. But that does not take away the fact that you have to make this the next decade for India, you have to be agile. And at the same time, if your agility does not lead to the outcome you desire, be resilient to, again, become agile and try, because what as an entrepreneur I've realized the hard way is the only way to succeed is try one more time.
Well, that's a good one. I think when we talk about people, it's very different what resilience and agility will look at scale. How would you define that? And what's exciting you actually about your industry in times to come?
I think this industry and creation and democratizing creation is going to be a space in itself, and both for individuals and for enterprises. I think it's going to release a very different energy all around the world, definitely in India. So definitely looking forward to that. Taking joy in the failures, because they teach you something. So keeping that's resilience, right? Encouraging, being vocal about it, talking to people. So the questions that we ask our leaders to really talk to people about is, what didn't work, right? Talk to me about things you tried and didn't work. That's really more important to me than the things that work, because that's the culture you want to create about experimentation, learning. And I think the biggest role for leaders in that moment is often being those individuals who are going to pass on the confidence. Confidence for those individuals who are actually working today to create the future, to say, we have confidence in you, we have confidence that you're going to unlock your own confidence in your ideas and your ability to experiment and your ability to try one more time, right? So I think if we can do that, I think we have a powerhouse of intelligence in folks in India.
From my perspective, I think now, the advent of technology has made it so accessible that what was previously a very technical role is now possible by anyone in the organization, right? Whether it is developing products, developing applications, whether it is designing technology. So I think the opportunity has now widened, the landscape has improved, and the culture of fail fast but learn is really important for our people to experiment and still learn and keep on trying, to Harsh's point.
Wonderful. This was such a pleasure. Thank you so much to all of you for those insights. And this was such a wonderful panel to have spoken to about not just what's happening in the GCC environment, but also what's actually pushing people and what kind of leaders we are and what kind of partnerships we are looking at. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, today's most consequential takeaway is clear. The true shift in GCC leadership is cultural, moving from mere execution to complete global ownership. The organizations with the courage to claim this will define India's enterprise future. Thank you for watching.
Forbes India GCC Leadership Exchange in association with Smartworks.